morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boisno with my co-host, Kevin Casey. And today we are joined by Seana Fippen. She is the CEO and co-founder of Redbox. Seana, we are so happy you're here today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great. We are in for a real treat. She has so much to share about cybersecurity and technology. But first, we're going to talk just ever so briefly about the fact that Wednesday, that would be tomorrow, kids, we have CPI, Consumer Price Index, coming out. Thursday is retail sales, and Friday is builder confidence and housing starts and permits. We all know that these can move the markets, but today we had the PPI came out, Producer Price Index, and guess what? Better than expected. So happy about that. It is, and we're expecting that PPI should be tame and in line tomorrow too. So fingers crossed. There's this whole analysis about what's going to go down tomorrow with CPI. Sorry, CPI tomorrow. And I'm going to skip it because we all know that you can analyze the crap out of all this stuff and then screech, it just goes off into the ditch and it doesn't matter anyway. So in less than 24 hours, we'll know what the deal is. And it will help us have a better idea of where we are heading in the economy. But really, the focus is on September 18th and the next Fed meeting, because after that BLS jobs report, it's looking good that we're going to definitely have a cut and maybe 50 basis points. What do you think, Kevin?
I'm going to go with the market, that 50 basis point thing. It seems to be kind of built in and everything, and seems to be right on that pace. So, and those numbers that came in, today, they're pretty sweet looking. 1%.
They are. I mean, Fed futures were, last time I looked, were showing 60 to 70% chance. That's kind of a big range, but regardless, of a 50 basis point cut. So we'll see. I mean, you still have some outliers in the Fed members. Michelle Bowman is always definitely amongst those who are just like talking nonsense for some reason. Keep meaning to ask my buddy at the Fed whether or not they all think she's a ding dong or not. Maybe she's great. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to that idea, but I don't think so. Just a guess. So with all that being said, we also are part of Chrisman Media. They have put together a lineup of shows. And so if you are familiar with Rob Chrisman and the Chrisman commentary, of course, you should always check that out. But also they have other shows that are covering different segments of the mortgage industry. And if you purchased Megan Anderson's, I don't know what to call it, Kevin. What was that thing we bought a couple weeks ago? Anyway, about the things she did on AI, where we're going to learn so much. Yeah, it came out. I haven't logged in yet, but you should have that email in your email. And if you don't, then let someone know, either her, if you have her contact information, or us, and I can put you in touch, and you can get rolling on that. And then last but certainly not least, live in MLS. We are working on putting together classes in different parts of the state. So just stay
live in person MLS.
Live and in person. We know you can take the online thing, but a lot of people like it live and in person. I am
like the interaction with the other classmates, and
I know
stuff, and
being in a room with actual humans. I don't know. There's something to be said for that, kids. So I would highly recommend exploring that option once we have them ready. So with that being said, Seana, let's take a dive into this, shall we? So why don't you give us an overview of what's going on out there with regard to cyber technology, cyber security, and what you're seeing with small businesses, and if you have specifics for the mortgage industry, that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Audrey and Kevin. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and your listeners today. It's a pleasure and an honor always to bring value to businesses, leaders, individuals, consumers, you name it. I love what you just shared. First of all, great news in a lot of regards there for your attendees. And I love what you shared about the live and in person. I think those events are so impactful. It's awesome from an efficiency standpoint that we have an opportunity to meet like this and bring value and carry messages to our stakeholders. But those live and in-person events are huge. We just actually held one last month at the Walnut Creek Center, California Plaza, And it was a business intelligence event, really well attended. We got a lot of rave reviews around that. We had, a delightful lunch. It was a miniature conference where we covered topics like AI, finance for companies, cybersecurity, and technology. And then ended up with some hula dancers and some Tesla cars for the driving, and finished it off with an awesome Red Box happy hour. So we'll be doing more of those. So I'd be happy to share that with, it was a really very special event. A lot of great people. And for us, that's what it's all about, is making an impact on people learning and growing together. Our particular avenue to do that just happens to be technology and cyber protections for companies, but we all have our own lane. But it's really, making those good connections, having those collaborations, and learning and growing together for us. So just thought I'd hit on that before we deep dive into the scary and dark waters of the dark web and cybercrime. So as I'm sure most people are really well aware of, this is one of the single largest risk to all businesses and a good majority of individuals if they're using any kind of technology today. To share with you a couple data points around that, companies are getting hacked every 7 to 11 seconds. And if you look at the gross domestic product of the United States of America, it's in the mid 20 trillions. China's is 17 trillion. Within a couple years, it's predicted that the cyber criminals will be taking from the United States and other countries as well, $13.82 trillion. So that would be equivalent to the third largest GDP in the world, just to give you an idea without pulling up all the charts and data. So that's how significant.
That'll make it really easy to find them then, because they're the ones who will have all the money.
Yes.
Problem solved.
Yep.
Oh my God, that is staggering. Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's heavy, it's real, it's credible, but that's why it's so important to shine the light on this and bring education, information, and awareness to it. Because these are not just a random guy in a hoodie in a dark room. These are full-blown organizations, educational institutions, that form on the dark web. And the majority of the internet is the dark web. If you were to look at a picture of an iceberg, the internet as we know it is the tip. All of the email communications, Yahoo news feeds, socials are all going through that. The gross majority where the criminal activity happens is significant and really prolific. And it is kind of scary. And as we had mentioned prior to the call, when we've had a few discussions, Audrey, we like to keep things light. We like to keep things inspirational, but we also have to acknowledge the real threats when they're there. And this is the most credible real threat that we're all faced with today, unfortunately.
And the reason that I'm so concerned about this for our listeners, and we're so concerned, is because so many people live in this little bubble and they're sitting in their office by themselves and they feel safe and secure. And their comment often is, it won't affect me. I can't afford to do anything differently. It's not part of their business model to be aware of this and to be on top of this. And the reality at this point is I'm seeing everyone from a little property manager getting hacked and having someone take ransom of their emails and their whole systems, to obviously big, huge institutions like recently. And I know I've talked about this on here before, but I'm a Patelco credit union customer and they were held ransom and I did not have access to my accounts or my money for 2.5 weeks, which I found to be astounding that could even happen. That's before we even get to things like CrowdStrike, which so let's get into that a little bit. So the little guy little person, maybe they're a big person, small business. That's my point. The small business person who thinks that it can't happen to them. Can you address that, please? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, well, I have a story after story. We're a strategic IT and cybersecurity company. We work with one-man shops all the way up to organizations, governmental organizations that have thousands of employees. There's not a lot of one or two man shops that are looking to invest in a full-blown IT department, because that's what you get with our team. Although some mortgage professionals, attorneys, doctors or medical organizations that are a little smaller, they have to meet compliance requirements. You may or may not, your listeners or in the lending business might be required to meet the California Consumer Privacy Act, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, or GDPR. Those are laws and regulations and around data privacy and being mindful of our consumers' data.
Let me just make sure, stop, because you said maybe we are subject to all those things, and we are absolutely tasked with protecting our borrowers' data to the best of our ability. And we have heard directly from the CFPB on here that when somebody is the subject of a ransomware attack or any sort of hack, I mean, not only you're supposed to report it, but you are now held, they're going to scrutinize your business and see if there were any holes. And if there was a place where you could have done a better job to protect your borrower's privacy, they are going to be on you. The regulators are. So that's before your clients come after you because you didn't protect their privacy and their data. But it is critically important that no matter how small you are as a small business owner, and this doesn't go just for our listeners, but their clients, because so many of us have self-employed people as our borrowers and our clients and family members. Let people know how big of a problem this is, because if it hasn't touched them yet, it's sadly, it's probably just a matter of time. So what can we do, right, to do everything we possibly can do to help them?
Yes. And Audrey, I just want to say thank you so much for shining the light on this topic and how important it is, not just for your industry, but for all industries. And it really depends on a lot of specifics, whether you're held to those compliancy requirements or not. Either way, we do have a duty and a responsibility, a fiduciary and otherwise, to be mindful of our clients, what we call PII in the industry. That's private identifiable information. If you're exchanging anything with an address, a social security number, I love it. Looks like both of you guys just wrote that down. So that's awesome. But we do. I mean, and you can lead with that once you have protections in place to let your stakeholders know we're mindful of your PII. That matters to us. It's the single most important principle for everything in business right now, is that we're taking cyber hygiene seriously and taking measures to protect that data. It doesn't mean everybody's doing everything perfect. I'm on calls regularly that blow my mind with large organizations, small organizations. We just cannot be trading PII on behalf of the people that are trusting us to be leaders for them through Gmail or Yahoo or free accounts. If you're not paying for an email account and you're getting paid by a client, you have a very real problem. And not only are you putting yourself in the firing range, but you're putting your clients, even more importantly, in a poor position. So being mindful of that PII and investing in, say, Microsoft 365 that's really the professional standard. There are some other alternatives. But, for better or worse, making sure you have, really, if you're exchanging heavy PII like socials, driver's license, that sort of thing, you need to be doing that with encrypted email. It's just having 365 is not going to do it. You have to have a set of tools on your email that you get separately from Microsoft. Those are tools that we provide to our clients. They're part of our contracts and engagement. Another thing that's really important, if you are held to those compliancy requirements that you're sharing about, Audrey, is that you're running semi-annual either vulnerability scans or penetration tests. So I would definitely do some work around that. If you haven't looked into that, we provide something called a CPS, a cybersecurity preparedness service, where our team runs in-depth analysis of companies. Sometimes they're very in-depth, sometimes they're just surface level. But either way, we evaluate their network and their systems and their software in 9 different areas and either give them a green, yellow, or red light and just make them smart on what their cybersecurity posture is and what moves they can make. And as you're sharing about in the past, you know, working with these other organizations and realizing how important this provides good information, and it shows that you're doing due diligence to these government agencies that are really cracking down. Interestingly enough, we find a lot of companies today are more concerned about the fines from the government than they are actually getting hacked. And every 7 to 11 seconds is quite frequent. And we see those hacks every single day where it's costing companies millions of dollars. And yes, the government's coming in and imposing thousands to tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars fines for not being mindful of this.
And they're more interested in the $100,000 fine than the $1 million loss.
Right. And then, you know, I mean, it breaks my heart. I was working with a company just a couple of weeks ago, and they will have to go bankrupt because the data shows consistently 60% of small and medium-sized businesses that get hacked do not recover. So this particular company, they have 150 employees. They're going to have to close their doors. You know, that happened with Kelly Moore Paints last year, and I could go
Oh, really?
on.
That was Kelly Moore.
Yeah, there were a number of reasons, and with private companies, not all of the information around the specifics are released. But with government, a lot of times those are public information. You brought up CrowdStrike. That actually was not a cybersecurity hack or breach. That was more of an operational and IT issue. Unfortunately, when you do patches or updates on your systems, which you should be doing, and you should be working with a team of professionals that deploys those in a safe and secure and strategic manner. And if you don't deploy them that way, they can crash systems and cause other concerns. That took down a third of the network, the global network, the IT and internet infrastructure, because it affected a data center for Microsoft. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company. It could have been a CRM company or a lending software company. It was just, they were involved. They had a lot of their software on a lot of servers. So that's why it had such an impact on our infrastructure and affected aviation and a lot of other systems as well. It sounds like you had some interruption as a result of that.
We did.
So.
And I had read that was due to a patch that was done incorrectly, but I didn't know whether I should believe that or not. I'm like, really? I mean, how does that happen? I don't even understand how.
They don't test it before they.
How? That's exactly it.
But how?
We deploy patches in a sandbox environment and test them out to see, because a lot of these software companies are busy. They make mistakes. They roll them out.
Everyone makes mistakes. That's natural, but test it and then test it. And then don't launch it worldwide on the same moment versus let's test it in Oklahoma first and then Nebraska and then spread out. Okay, now hit California.
Don't act like some states
now hit the rest of the world.
Now we know which states Kevin thinks are least matter the least. Okay, I want to go back to this email thing because it is something that we're seeing with LOs, because we have a database, right, for Mortgage Pros 411, and we're seeing a lot of LOs who have personal email addresses, and I am very concerned that people are not secure. And my other concern is people think, oh, I'm going to put it in my subject line, my signature line. Oh, wire fraud is on the rise, or don't forget about it.
No one reads that.
That's one thing. They're not going to read it. I say it to my borrowers repeatedly. I'm like, I literally, in my conversations with them, do not email me anything that has an account number, a social security number, anything that it needs to be secure. I say in words. And
they still do it. They still will send me, I guess.
But at least you did your part. At least you did your part. I agree. They don't always listen, but at least you're doing what you can to help them. You can't save everyone from themselves, but you could certainly raise the bar and do more than just sticking it in your signature line, which in my opinion is a good reminder, but not the way to communicate something that's that important. And so Yeah, we're seeing it a lot. And I
Yeah.
see it with realtors too. Realtors don't use secure emails. And so they're like, that's why I think so many wire fraud issues happen, because the bad guys are watching realtors' emails, knowing that they're not secure. And they're like, that's how they find out what transaction, when, where, how, what. And so the whole wire fraud conversation, I mean, I've been scaring the crap out of my clients since, I don't know, I went to some event in Atlanta years ago, like 8 years ago, maybe 9, and I heard a Secret Service agent talk about this whole wire fraud thing before it was really a big deal. And
Yeah.
so I literally saved my clients hundreds of thousands of dollars because it has come up in our transactions, and they'll call me and they're like, Audrey, I think it's happening, literally. And you can avoid it, right? You can just not, don't send your money that way. So we talk about sending wires. I do this again, I do it up front in my initial conversation so that by the time I'm saying it again later, it's familiar to them. It's not the first time they're hearing it, and it's more real. So conversations are critically important. You got to talk to your borrowers and say it over and over again.
Absolutely, full agreement. And you know, another great reminder of why it's so important to be mindful of having an adequate professional email. Email is our largest and most important form of communication and software for the most part across the board. So making sure you're investing, it doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't go to a dealership and expect a free car. Why would you think that your most important piece of technology would be free, and that would make any sense in this day and age when it's cybercrime is the largest threat and liability, right?
Yeah.
And then making sure there's a tool stack on top of that particular email is important. You know, if you look at the data, the majority of malicious payloads are in environments for up to 18 months before they strike. So they're watching. I mean, they have teams and teams and teams of
18
people
months.
that are watching what's going on. I was talking with a lender. You know, we work with a number of different organizations out in the East County area because we're very involved in leadership and nonprofit and economic development in East County. We have a national footprint as far as IT and cyber security goes, and a national network there with some incredible leaders of industry, thank goodness. But you know, we were working with a mortgage professional out in our area who called and said, I am like blown away. Somebody impersonated us. They knew every detail about this borrower. You know, they forwarded our teams the emails that went back and forth. And sure enough, you know, the people had been in there and monitoring everything and just waiting for the right time to strike. So our team
Wow.
goes into companies and we run penetration software that can find these sleeping Trojans and these malicious payloads that are in the network, just waiting for the right time at finance. I mean, they know what's going on. We're being monitored. The truth of the matter is, I can pull a dark web scan and pretty much pull up the majority of passwords for all free email accounts right now. And just did it with a marketing company on Monday of last week, where we pulled up 2,000 passwords for their company in plain text. And we're all under non-disclosure, and we're with their executive team, and they agreed they did want the plain text, but all their email passwords are right there. That is the information that is for sale on us and our consumers as well on the dark web. So yeah, it's definitely very, very important to be mindful of that. And then, you know, 91% of the way that this is getting into our systems is through phishing scams. So if you don't have a cybersecurity awareness program, that's part of our advanced security stack. We're going to make sure you're because common sense isn't so common. That's why my hat goes off to you, Audrey and Kevin, for bringing this important topic to your listeners. A lot of people just, you know, we do phishing simulations, and we have people in the technology industry and cybersecurity that
And they
fall
fall for it, don't they?
Yeah, but
Remind
it's great.
everyone
That's
what
why we test.
Remind everyone what phishing, phishing means.
Yeah,
Not
so
phishing.
phishing is, and you can, you know, think of it like the guy with the pole. There's just a lot of cyber criminals out there with poles waiting for somebody to take the bait and click on a link. So just don't click, you know, is what we say. Just don't click. Always get human validation. Check with your IT professional with your CFO, with your partner in crime, with your kid, whatever it is, before you click on any links, even the unsubscribe links in your email. That's when we talk about email tools. If you have the right tool on board, you can just click, this is spam or junk or not approved, and you don't have to deal with clicking any links to, I see Jill James said I got one of those today, and crazy how clever they can be. And yeah, speaking to Ed's point about how clever, artificial intelligence has made this entirely different landscape now. And artificial intelligence has been around since the 1970s. Most people don't know. And that could be a whole nother topic of discussion, because we help implement good AI strategy for companies. But the cyber criminals are armed with those AI tools, and it's allowed them to be a lot more sophisticated and a lot more clever, speaking to Ed's point there. So yeah, so phishing is where they're baiting you and trying to get you to click on something so they can run an executable and get inside your computer or your system and watch what's going on. And then the wire fraud comes because they're watching you. They know who you're banking with, who you're talking to. They know your pet's name. They all of a sudden know a lot of information that's going on with you. And then it's actually relatively easy for them to add themselves, like we experienced a couple months ago with a client, a prospective client, who called after somebody got added to their Wells Fargo account as a signer and distributed $95,000 overseas to test the account and see if it worked, and it did. And they were not able to recoup those funds because the cyber criminal followed due process for the bank and was able to add somebody on there. And unfortunately, you know, that happens a lot with a lot of banks. It's prolific. And if you talk to anybody in banking and finance, I mean, it's really hard to stop the bleed. The most important thing is to be mindful. You asked about phishing. There's also smishing, which is SMS phishing, text phishing, where they'll send you a link. And I share this is important. And it might be like a car dealership. And they'll say, you know, thank you for coming in, Audrey, for your service. Please click on this link. We realized we charged you $250 too much, or we want to refund you $250. And they already have PII on you because they're in the car dealership's network. So they know your name, they know your make and model, they know you came in there. So they just established credibility and rapport. And you and I and every other guy thinks, oh, well, this makes sense. Of course, it's the dealership, because how else would they have all this information? So that's why we say an abundance of caution, getting human validation is really important.
Well, and just a quick reminder that you never take a phone number from someone who just called or from the email. You always verify the phone number independently. And I tell my clients, if anyone gives you any pushback at all about bugging them with this, or, oh, it's, you know, why are you bothering me? You just let me know and I'll just, okay. I was going to say smack the shit out of them, but I guess I shouldn't say that. Anyway,
she'll send SEAL Team 6 after them.
do not let anyone get away with that crap, because again, we have everybody's, well, the joke is I've never, ever touched anyone in my entire life. I would never, but anyway, I love to say it makes me happy. So anyway, yeah, you just need to be super clear with people so they understand the gravity of this and that it is worth the extra effort, because it is so simple just to go, oh, this will be fine. And you know what I mean? It's not.
I had a friend just recently got caught up in one, and the questions they were asking from him were like really benign questions. And so he's like, I don't get why they're asking me these questions. But then after it was all done, they figured out that what they were doing was they were applying for credit in their name. And you know, when you apply for credit, it asks you, you know, what cities have you lived in? What kind of car did you have? They were asking those questions in a convoluted way so that he didn't feel uncomfortable answering them. And then only later realized, after he realized that this is kind of some kind of scam, and then thought about the questions he was being asked, like they're using that to open credit in my name.
Yeah, don't answer. Like when people call you, don't answer their questions. And I mean, we had our identity stolen like, I don't know, 4 years ago or sometime, I don't even know when it was, but it's been a while. but it was really awful. And it was through Wells Fargo. And I was on the phone with their customer service as someone was moving money between accounts and taking money out of an ATM in Florida. And it was crazy. And they did like nothing. They just did nothing. They acted like somehow I had something to do with it. And, is a horrible experience. And everything that I knew, because I know this stuff as an LO, right? It just goes flying out of your head when it's you. And so it's just, it's emotional. It's tough when it happens to you, but we need to be so hyper vigilant. And again, use these things to talk to your clients. Share this information as much as you can. It's not hyperbole. It's not. This is real. I mean, how many seconds, Shauna? That is insanity.
Yeah, every 7
It's terrible. Okay, so we have someone who said, anyone seen the movie The Beekeeper? Which,
That's
if you
awesome
haven't seen
movie.
The Beekeeper, I'm telling you. So, like last week, when I was at that event in Newport Beach, there was an FBI presentation, and that's where I first saw the term or heard the term PII, PPI, PII,
Yeah,
PII, and I asked him. I said, "Excuse me, does the FBI employ the techniques that were shown in the movie The Beekeeper?" And I'm like, we wish. If you haven't seen it, it is gory, but entertaining because the bad guys really get what they have coming to them. But it is just a reminder about elder abuse and what's going on with these organized rings of
Times, yeah.
people where they, what is the thing, Shauna? John Oliver did a great bit on it. It's called pig. I'll have to look it up. Anyway, pig surfing. Is that right? Anyway, he did
pig butchering.
butchering. Thank you.
Pig butchering.
The pigs are
Well,
not surfing;
yeah.
they are being butchered. Pig butchering. He did an amazing bit on that really showed, they've got people in call centers, and some of them are not necessarily there on their own free will. They're being held there, but they're so organized and so.
So, and to speak to your point, Audrey, pig butchering is a term, it's a social engineering term, and it really kind of revolves around the fact that these criminals are very sophisticated. Like you said, they have training programs, they have some of these criminal organizations have PR plans, public relations. They say, we will be the best. I mean, I've seen the ransomware notes myself, where the criminal organization from abroad says, we have the best customer service of any cyber criminals on the dark web. We're going to return your data within 72 hours, and we'll take exceptional care of you and be so friendly. And we'll be mindful of your hygiene after this. We just need you to deposit, $1.3 million to this crypto vault, and we'll give you your company back.
I've heard that when you call the FBI, when you are ransomware, that they will tell you whether these are the good guys or the really bad guys.
Yep.
And, oh yeah, if you pay these guys, they'll give you the money back. And it's kind of crazy that, well, why don't they just go and find these guys too while they're at it, since they're just raiding them?
Unfortunately, there's been very little accountability. Yeah, it's tough because the majority of them are overseas. So,
and some of them are protected by the countries they're in, or it's part of the organization within the country. They're, with the country.
Like North Korea.
I'm not saying any names, Kevin, but yes.
Audrey.
So, we have a comment here from Joe Weber, who is going to be with us in 2 weeks, because he's an insurance agent. I know he's great. He said cyber losses are insurable. Individual organizations must commit in reviewing their current posture. Many commercial insurance policies now have reduced sublimits or outright policy exclusions caused by cyber ransomware claims. So you've got it, and we talked about this.
Yeah, you have to have the insurance. You also have to not just say, well, I have the insurance, I have to worry about it anymore. You have to take extra steps. I have a buddy in security, he does cybersecurity also, and he calls it the before the boom and after the boom events. So the boom is when you're hacked, and it's what steps did you do before, and then what steps do you have to do after, and they're totally different specialists in each one.
Completely different plans. And I love what Joe shared and that you brought that up, Audrey. So we'll go back to pig butchering after, because I know this topic can get all over the place. That's about social engineering. But to focus on the before the boom and after the boom, Kevin, such a great point. Before the boom is prevention, and it's like anything. It's before a heart attack. And 1 ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Absolutely. So if you have an adequate security stack, that prevents these guys from getting in to begin with. An adequate advanced security stack includes cybersecurity awareness training, a password manager, multi-factor authentication tools, a XDR or MDR or EDR, which is similar to an antivirus. It also includes, breach awareness and educational campaigns. So there's a lot to that, but very important that you get something along those lines, some advanced cyber, like Norton Antivirus and McAfee and Kaspersky. Just that those little tools will not do it anymore. We're not in the economy of there's a virus issue like the 1990s when the internet first came out. This is a prolific systemic issue,
constant attacks.
One virus. Yeah, they're coming from a number of different areas. And to speak to Joe's point, cyber insurance and what Joe was referring to there, they received more cyber criminal activity, and they paid out more in 2021 for the first time ever than they did in the policy premiums they brought in. They paid out to cyber criminals, and the insurance companies got real smart to that real quick through actuary and everything else. They're not going to keep paying out and losing money. That's not what they're in the business to do. Right. So the policies now involve having these advanced security tools like a regular penetration test and vulnerability scan, MFA, password managers, that sort of thing, to make people mindful of their hygiene. The problem is that if you don't have those and you answer that questionnaire that you do, you won't see $1 if you get hacked. And so before the boom is, hundreds to thousands of dollars of an investment and the cost of doing business. Unfortunately, there is a cost to that. The after the boom is in the millions. If you look at the data right now, the average ransomware payment today, and if I was saying this, it would have been a quarter of this a couple years ago, is 4 million right now. So, and that's why 60% of the companies are going out of business. But super important to work with a great insurance professional. We have a lot of respect for Joe. We've worked, closely with him, and I know you all do too. He's the president of the East Bay Independent Insurance Agents and out of Oakley Insurance out in East Contra Costa County as well. But he could definitely take a look at your cyber insurance plan and see what tweaks you need, or if you're covered or if you're not, if you're answering your questionnaire correctly. He's got a lot of experience in cyber, and it's a big lift for everybody. Insurance these days and anything technology related, just like lending and finance, it's a whole different discussion now.
So just want to take a brief moment, since Joe and I we interviewed the state insurance commissioner last Tuesday in person in Newport Beach at the camp event at the California Association of Mortgage Professionals. And I was waiting for Joe to put a comment out about what we talked about to make sure that I didn't. It went so fast and it was just not enough time. But let me just say, I felt better, as did most of the audience, after listening to state insurance commissioner. Sadly, we didn't even get to cybercrime and cyber insurance, etc. He also shuddered when he mentioned earthquake. That was a whole nother thing. But since California is the #1 market for insurance in the country and number 3 or 4 in the world, what happens here gets to every other state eventually.
And country.
And country often. So what Joe had written, which I'm just going to read so I don't screw it up. I was honored to be with my friend Audrey Boisneau, lending my support during the California Mortgage Professionals Camp annual conference in Newport Beach. Attendees heard directly from two state commissioners. Actually, that is true. We had Chica Sundquist, who's the Department of Real Estate. She's awesome. And Ricardo Lara, who's the insurance commissioner. And they heard him say, Laura, that he's committed to updating the regulations, including CAT, capital letters modeling, allowing insurers to pass along the cost of reinsurance and future rates by making by the end of 2024. So when they declared that state of emergency last year, and I thought it was total crap, and what is this going to actually do? what wasn't conveyed very well, because I didn't understand it, is it accelerated the time periods that are allowed for making decisions and making changes, or it compressed them is probably a better way to put it. So it shortened them. So now they have less time to dink around with, should we do this? What should we do? Now they have to actually do something within an amount of time. And I believe it was a year, which leaves us 5 months left. So he said 2025 looks to be the beginning of insurance market stabilization, restoring a robust competitive market, relieving homeowners of runaway premiums, and improving the fair plan financial performance. He said the hard fact is conditions can't improve quick enough. And actually, I asked very bluntly and sort of stayed on the commissioner until he answered it. I'm like, so how long until this is fixed? How long? And he said 3 years. I mean, I literally slumped down in my seat when he said that. So it's going to begin to get better, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be better. And so we've asked their office, as did CAMP, if there is something that we as originators can do to help, and real estate professionals, let us know, because our clients are really hurting. And my concern is always the people who have less money and they don't have the resources to pay these huge premiums. So, if the people in my neighborhood are having their insurance canceled, most of them can weather that storm. But if you've got somebody who is living on a fixed income, they are absolutely in deep doo-doo. So that's a technical mortgage term, just so you know, deep doo-doo. So you feel free to use it whenever you want. With that being said, the insurance thing we'll cover it with him in 2 weeks. We need an update anyway on insurance. It was fascinating. I did a panel with him the day before, and it was very, very interesting, but it's all kind of connected on some level, right? So this whole idea, again, I just want to make sure we're clear. And somebody asked, how much do your services cost? I don't want to go into that here because it is very individual. It's like someone saying, how much is the rate? What's the rate today? Well, that depends on a million different things, doesn't it? I need to know your FICO score and your value and what your purpose is, and what your dog's name is, and a whole bunch of other things before I can answer the question. And the same would go for your services, I would imagine, right? So we will make sure that people have your information and they can contact you guys directly and get the answer for their particular situation.
Sure. Yeah, they can call directly into our office, and we can always schedule a discussion with, a small, even a practical plan of action with some advisement, as a complimentary, or providing, we invest in an education tool for clients. We also invite clients to business intelligence events where they can incorporate artificial intelligence and some good technology to really impact their bottom line for the better, not just the cybersecurity protections, because we're really about growing companies in a big way and have done so for 30 years. My dad patented caller ID back in the 60s. So I was born and raised in technology before the internet was around. And had been in enterprise technology since the internet first came out, before Google was even a thing, or even Netscape for that matter. I was turning up technical support departments back in the 90s in college. So yes, I love I love that you're going to have that discussion with Joe around insurance. I'm sure cyber will be part of that.
Yep.
Our pricing and model, to answer your question, Aubrey, is pretty straightforward and very transparent and very cost effective. And we do work with, small solopreneurs that are wanting to be mindful and have an advanced cybersecurity stack, because that stack, or what we call solution, because the stack is the stack of tools. It's like 7 pieces of software that go on your system and protect you from all the open doors and windows, if you will. And I won't get into all the technical terms, but that really gives you an idea. Right now, the gross majority of all people and businesses have the majority of those doors and windows open, and they just don't even realize it.
Right.
So we come in, we run a penetration test or a vulnerability assessment called a cybersecurity preparedness scan. Joe's been a part of a number of these engagements. He's sent, a number of businesses our way, Joe Weber. And we run those scans, and then we educate the client on what their current cyber posture is. And then we give them a recipe for where they need to button things up and make a recommendation on the best security stack. But we call it a solution because we have a team of experts that are trained in security operations. They're CISSPs. We have SOC 2 Type 2 Security Operations Center and a 24/7 US-based network operations center. So our team is prolific. You know, we've worked with people who have helped design the CISA infrastructure at the federal government. Sometimes we're on with FBI if it's a remediation, like Kevin was referring to post-boom, is remediation efforts rather than mitigation. That's that whole mitigation is preventing it from happening. Remediation is responding to it. That's usually in the millions. And, you know, unfortunately, people really are starting to understand that now. You know, one of the CEOs I spoke with a couple months ago said, I know this is going to cost me millions of dollars now, and I should have done something about it sooner. And I know it, but give me an idea of what your team can do to help negotiate the ransomware and get us out of this. And nobody wants
not even like the other one's not having enough insurance on it too. Like that's
Right.
or I've heard on one of the ones we've mentioned where they didn't have enough coverage, and that shut them down for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, this particular one that I was just referring to had a $5 million policy, and the ransomware request was I think it was a little under 2.5, 2.4. And so they did have enough insurance. Unfortunately, they had answered a few questions on that questionnaire saying that they use multi-factor authentication, and they did not. And so any one question that's wrong, you do not get $1 of insurance if you don't have an advanced security stack on board.
Wow.
That's why you need a team of people.
Yep.
It would be like saying you have a fire extinguisher at your house. You know, I don't know all the nuances of various parts of insurance.
But you don't have one, and then you say you did, and then there's a fire, and then they say, well, where's your fire extinguisher? I didn't have.
Like saying you have an alarm system on your house, so you get the discount, but then all of a sudden you get burglarized and they come and there's no alarm system. They're not giving you $1.
Wow.
And Joe can speak more to that
Yep.
when he's on the call for sure.
So we had a comment here that someone told some people who kept calling their mother, their elderly mother, that the FBI had tapped their phone and was listening, and that ended those calls. I don't know whether you can scare them that way, but it's not a terrible idea. I mean, since we often feel very helpless around these things, it gives you something. And then there are the people who think it's fun to mess with them and, you know, like make them think that they're about to, you know, hit the jackpot, and they spend hours of their time. I can't do that, but some people think that's fun. So
yeah,
That's what I did.
Actually on a call not too long ago, and I kept getting another call. I was in a meeting. It was nothing super high level, so I thought, oh, I can step away for a quick minute here because this is clearly an emergency. And the person said, you know, my business partner who has an AOL account, I'll just leave it at that, is on with AOL support right now, and I'm a little concerned. I just took this video. Something isn't making sense about this. So what happened was this AOL user went online for AOL support. They got the phone number for AOL support, which was actually a criminal ring. And when I looked at the video that they recorded, I was watching the cyber criminal in their network who was on the phone with their business partner pretending to be AOL disable their antivirus tools that they had. So that, you know, she just happened to capture that moment of the video of them saying, oh yeah, let's take a look at your system. And she goes, well, you know, why would you need to be in Norton? Which is not as comprehensive as they needed anyways. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of the sophistication of these groups, and how egregious they are. That kind of goes a little bit back to that pig butchering, which is really fattening up the their prospects, or victims, if you will. And that's a social engineering, traditional methodology of building trust, building respect, going back and forth. It's happening day in and day out, and then dropping the bomb or the boom that, you know, Kevin refers to, and taking them. And it breaks my heart. You know, I didn't go into this industry to fight crime. I went in to help build companies and make them more efficient, more lean, and leverage technology to do good work. Teachers did not go into education to have active shooter drills. It's a duty and a calling for all of us, really, to be more mindful and more responsible and more diligent to this. So when I say I appreciate you and Mortgage Pros 411 bringing attention to this matter, I mean that deeply, because, you know, Kevin Mitnick was the world's most famous hacker. And he helped train me like 10 years ago. Rest in peace, Kevin. He was an awesome professional. He started out phone hacking. I was phone hacking when I was 12. I mean, none of this is really rocket science at the end of the day.
Right.
But when Kevin educated me on the dark web and the credentials that were for sale out there on people, and I watched, 1,000 technology professionals in a room come together in the dark and check all their computers and phones, and the information that we saw being bought and sold on the dark web was astounding. And we knew we had a duty and honor and an obligation to educate people and build a remarkable platform to protect them.
I'm sorry to hear he passed away because I always look forward to his class each year.
I know. Oh, where did you see him, Kevin?
Yeah, he's
Well,
been
we got
part
it
of our,
online.
yeah, he's part of our updates that we have gotten in the last, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. No, special man in a lot of ways. In fact, we had Cody Kritzninger with Galactic was out at our business intelligence event, and he's a formerly he went to prison for cyber crimes with the LuzTech hack with Sony. And now he's an ethical hacker, and he helps build systems and security operations centers to protect people from this. But yeah, it's wild. I mean, the stories I could tell could go on all day. But the important thing is just being mindful and being aware and getting smart on it. And like you said, being of value, not just here today to your listeners, but making sure they are of value to the businesses and professionals that they're working with. And it shows that everybody is on top of their game professionally because they're aware that this is the single largest risk.
Yeah.
And the biggest liability, and that there are measures we can take. We just have to dedicate some time and some resources to it.
Exactly. I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about the NAR settlement that goes into effect on Saturday, August 17th. Just a few notes around this, so just bear with me, Seana. There's a lot of turmoil in the real estate community, and it reminds me so much of when LO Comp rolled out, and all of a sudden we had the LE and the life, that we knew was over, and we were never going to do any business again, and everything was going to HE double toothpicks. It was just, you know what I mean? Do you remember that, Kevin?
Fondly.
Okay, I remember it vividly. I remember putting together for camp actually at the chapter level, like literally panels of experts who did come in and tell everyone how it should be done, et cetera, et cetera. And hundreds and hundreds of people would show up, and then you have 5 different people, you had 5 different answers to what the right answer was. It was very confusing. And there was this adjustment period, which is what we're about to embark on with the realtors. So they're all freaked out. It's all going to be okay. The 29% of them who don't think, they're not sure if they'll be in the industry in 2 years, good riddance, get out, because we need committed professionals to do this as a profession and not as, a side hobby that they can make a few bucks here and there. So just remember to be there for your realtors. And I just wanted to clarify a few things. So again, that settlement is not final. The people at NAR that I have contact with don't want to speak publicly right now because they're still dealing with the DOJ, Department of
the
Justice.
DOJ is the more important part, more than that.
Yeah, it is not over till it's over. So everything they're rolling out right now, I mean, they could find out in 3 months that it's not actually exactly what it should be.
DOJ
So
yep.
just kind of bear with it. But currently, this is what we think we know. 4 things. A specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount or rate of compensation the real estate agent will receive or how this amount will be determined. 2, compensation that is objective. So, flat fee, what percentage, an hourly rate. It can't be open-ended. It can't be buyer broker compensation shall be whatever the amount the seller is offering the buyer. That's not okay. It's got to be determined upfront. 3, a term that prohibits the agent from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. And finally, 4, a conspicuous statement that the broker fees and commissions are fully negotiable and not set by law. And I've gotten further clarification, but again, for God's sake, don't take my word on anything. Double check the information I give you, because I am not an attorney and I don't work with NAR. But my understanding is from multiple sources that the people at open houses don't need to have that buyer agreement in place I'm seeing some companies that are saying that it is required. My understanding is it shouldn't be. So double check that. Again, don't take my
Say
word
that
for it.
again, what shouldn't be?
Like when you go to an open house, there are
Right.
some people who are saying you have to have everyone at an open house sign it. Any buyer who walks in the door needs to sign it. So that has been debunked. I heard that directly from a NAR legal, I forget what her title is, but I could find it. Anyway, so I've heard it directly from NAR and I've heard it from a couple of other sources, but I've also heard realtors say, oh my God, we have to do it on every open house. The other thing that I think is interesting is it applies to leases. I don't think I realized that till a couple of days ago. So they have to have an agreement on a lease as well.
Mhm.
So they're, again, we're going to be in a transition period, kids. It doesn't mean that the world is going to end. It doesn't
Hopefully it's
mean
not
that
like
they're
in
not going to have jobs or get
2010.
paid. What, Kevin?
I hope it's not like 2010 when all of a sudden the new year kicked in and all of a sudden the rules were all changed and you couldn't close an escrow for a couple of months because the escrow officers had to make everything redone again to match the new rules. And I just remember that being a very bleak moment in my career where it's like all these loans were just stacked. Couldn't close for 2 months.
You know what? It's the confusion. So we stay the course. We've always been able to negotiate fees. Just continue that way. That's all. It's super easy. And you
Yeah.
have to have an agreement with the buyer up front. I mean, how it on one level, I'm wondering if this is going to be a relief at some point, because then you're not going to have these buyers that are stumbling around, just going from one realtor to the next realtor to the next. Like there has to be some thought and effort and, there's an energy that goes into that relationship and maybe it will make it more valuable. I hope so. Right.
Yeah.
Also want to clear, I have been asked, I don't know, multiple times in the last few days by realtors, whether there are any loans that are making it so you can add the buyer's agent's comp to the loan. And the answer that I've heard is no. And not only no, but lenders have no interest in getting into this end of things. So just kind of understand that and don't expect it to happen. And again, I don't want to we run out of time before we run out of, I've got like a whole list of other things to talk about, but Shauna, I want
Next
to make
time.
sure, what?
Next week.
I know, I always think that, but then anyway, Shauna, I just want to make sure that we take this last couple minutes and just wrap up with any last thoughts.
And I had a one last question for Shauna. We had a question regarding text messaging.
Yeah, good
I think I
question.
know the answer because I'm getting these text messages where Siri reads the content of the photo or the contents of the attachment in the text. I'm like, if Siri knows exactly what was in the text, then the whole friggin' world knows what was attached to that text. Am I correct?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, privacy is not as real of a thing anymore, right? Under all the circumstances. I mean, Zoom changed their policy, and they retain and own, per their EULA, their end user license agreement, all the data that goes on back and forth via Zoom. So you may or may not know that. That is their intellectual property. Anything that we're having a discussion about now or any other information that's private, not really private. So yes,
that's a great reminder actually with the Zoom thing, because if you are having meetings with your clients over Zoom and you're discussing their private information,
yes,
I mean, it isn't that private. And also Kevin and I were talking about this a couple of years ago. The state of Washington was fining loan officers $5,000 a hit for meeting their clients at a Starbucks or some public area that wasn't secure and having an in-person, not even technology, right? But having an in-person, but not private enough conversation with their borrowers, talking about socials, et cetera. So we have to have a whole different thinking cap around this these days. And there is no amount of care that is too much. So yeah, so we'll make sure that we get your information out to everyone so that they are aware of how to reach you, etc. And I would encourage people to take the time and effort and money. Just go get one more loan. I mean, seriously, think of it that way. Get one more loan a year and pay for this or whatever it is, right? So, Shauna, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And if you hear of other updates or things that we should know and our listeners should hear, let us know because we're happy to share. And just remember, we've got on YouTube, Mortgage Pros 411. You can listen to all of the past episodes. You can do 1.5 speed and knock it out quicker. Except for the CFPB. Those are the only ones that aren't on there. So our friend Jason Bellevue takes care of that, and we thank him. And to everyone, have a wonderful week. Go get some loans. Don't worry about the rates. Just go get some loans and close them. All right. Bye, guys.
Privileged to be here. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you so much. It was a
Appreciate that.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and your audience. Take
All
care.
right.
Not
Bye-bye.
forget. Bye-bye.